I didn't believe in intuition, at least not in the dramatic way people talk about it. I believed in habits, routines, mistakes you repeat because nothing bad has happened yet. This story isn't about a monster bursting through a door. It's about a door that stayed open long enough for something to notice. We had a bad habit. A stupid one. The kind that feels harmless because it's boring. We didn't lock our front door. Not out of confidence, not out of bravery. Just negligence wrapped in routine. We'd come home late, tired, distracted by conversations that didn't matter, close the door behind us, and walk away. The door was closed. That felt final enough. Sometimes in the morning, one of us would notice. You could tell immediately. The handle moved too easily. No resistance. No sound of metal catching. "Did you lock it?" one of us would ask. "I thought you did." That familiar irritation. That soft, pointless argument. Who came in last? Who forgot? Who was more careless? Nothing ever happened. That's how habits survive. Once, in early spring, a strong draft from the stairwell pushed the door open in the middle of the night. It slammed against the wall so hard it rattled a picture frame. We woke up at the same time, hearts racing, convinced someone had broken in. But the hallway was empty. Just cold air drifting in from the stairwell. Just silence. Just us standing there barefoot, embarrassed by our own fear. We laughed about it the next day, promised to be more careful. We weren't. That night began without drama. No storm. No strange sounds. No nightmares. I went to bed late, scrolled my phone longer than I should have, and eventually turned the screen off. The apartment settled around us, pipes ticking softly, the distant hum of traffic several blocks away, the kind of silence you don't notice until it feels heavier than usual. I closed my eyes. Sleep didn't come. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't thinking about anything specific. My body felt tired, but my mind stayed alert, hovering in that uncomfortable space between awake and asleep. Then the thought appeared. Not sudden, not sharp, just present. The door. I ignored it. People think intuition feels urgent. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just a quiet suggestion that refuses to leave. I shifted in bed, tried to focus on my breathing, on the familiar shape of my wife sleeping beside me. The thought stayed. The door. I checked the time, a little after 3 in the morning. The worst hour. Too late to be night. Too early to be morning. I told myself I'd already checked it. That I always did. That there was no reason to get up. The thought didn't argue. It waited. Eventually, I gave in. The hallway felt colder than the bedroom. It always did at night, but this time it felt deliberate. The floor creaked softly under my weight as I moved, each sound too loud in the quiet apartment. The door stood where it always did. Ordinary. Unremarkable. I reached for the handle. It turned. Unlocked. A familiar frustration rose in me. Not fear. Annoyance. At myself. At the habit we never broke. I locked the main lock slowly, listening to the clicks echo down the hallway. Then I hesitated. Below the main lock was a second one. Old. Heavy. The kind of lock that feels excessive in an apartment building. We never used it. I don't know why I reached for it. I locked it too. 4 full turns. It felt important in a way I couldn't explain. I stepped away from the door. That's when I heard something on the other side. At first, I thought it was my imagination. the brain filling silence with patterns. But the sound came again. Soft. Slow. Not footsteps. Not knocking. It sounded like something brushing against the door, like hands moving over the surface of the wood, feeling it carefully, exploring it. I stopped breathing. The handle moved slightly. Up. Down. Not violently. Not urgently. Testing. Then came a dull tapping. Irregular. No rhythm. Like fingers that didn't quite understand how knocking was supposed to work. A cold sensation spread through my chest. Not panic, not even fear. Something heavier. A deep sense of wrongness. The kind that doesn't rush you. It sinks in. I took a step back. Behind me, the mattress shifted. My wife stirred, half asleep, whispering my name. I raised a finger to my lips. She saw my face and went still. There was something else in our apartment. Something we hadn't thought about in years. A camera. My brother had given it to us as a gift back when he worked installing security systems. A small camera mounted above the doorframe, pointed at the landing outside our apartment. It was connected to an old laptop we barely used. We'd tested it once, laughed at ourselves, then forgotten it entirely. I don't know why humans do this. Why, when something unknown presses against the edge of reality, we feel the need to see it. Like staring into darkness even when instinct tells you not to. I moved slowly, every step careful, afraid sound itself might matter. I opened the laptop and waited for it to wake up. The screen glowed softly in the dark. The feed loaded. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. The stairwell was dim, lit by a flickering overhead bulb. The walls were stained with years of dirt and footsteps. And near our door, something moved. It didn't walk. It shifted. Bent. Adjusted itself. Its body was wrapped in layers of dark fabric. Not clothes, not really. The material clung to it, stretched around unnatural angles, folding where fold shouldn't be. Long arms slipped out from the rags. Too long. Too thin. Ending in fingers that bent the wrong way. Each one stretched far beyond normal proportions, like something that had guessed at human anatomy and gotten it wrong. It dragged those fingers along the doors, scratching lightly, pausing, listening. It leaned toward peepholes, not looking through them, tilting its head as if sound mattered more than sight. My wife's hand tightened around my arm. She was shaking now, silently, her breathing shallow. The thing moved closer to our door, stopped, pressed itself against it. I felt my stomach drop. On the screen, one of its hands reached for our handle. It didn't move. The fingers tightened, then loosened. It tried again. Nothing. Slowly, deliberately, it lowered its head and pressed it against the door, as if listening to something on the other side. To us. I whispered a prayer under my breath, not because I believed, because silence felt dangerous. The thing stayed there for a long time. Then, finally, it pulled away and began to move toward the stairs. It didn't leave the building. That was the first thing I understood as I watched the camera feed. It didn't rush. It didn't retreat the way an intruder would after failing to open a door. It withdrew. Slowly. Carefully. As if the encounter hadn't failed, only paused. The thing reached the stairwell and lowered itself down the steps, not standing upright, not crawling exactly, but folding into itself and sliding downward in short, uneven motions. Its limbs bent and straightened, in ways that made my eyes ache to follow. Then it disappeared from view. The landing was empty again. The flickering light buzzed softly. Nothing else moved. I waited. I don't know how long. My sense of time felt distorted, stretched thin. My wife and I sat frozen on the bed, the laptop open between us, afraid that any movement might somehow carry through the walls. Minutes passed. Nothing happened. The sky outside the window began to lighten, just slightly. That soft, early morning blue that feels unreal after a night without sleep. I wanted to believe it was over. Neither of us spoke. We stayed awake until the sun rose fully. When morning finally arrived, it did so cruelly, normal and bright, as if nothing had happened. Birds somewhere outside, a car starting in the distance, someone coughing in another apartment. The world had returned to itself. But we hadn't. I checked the door again. Both locks held firm. The wood showed no marks, no scratches, no signs of tampering. Nothing to prove that anything had been there at all. Except us. My wife sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the door like it might move on its own. "I don't want to be here tonight," she said quietly. I didn't argue. We called in sick to work, packed a few bags, left the apartment before noon. As I pulled the door closed behind us, I locked both locks and stood there for a moment longer than necessary, listening. Nothing. The hallway smelled like cleaning solution and dust. Ordinary. Harmless. Too harmless. We stayed with friends for a few nights, tried to talk about other things, tried to laugh. But something had changed in the way silence felt. At night, every unfamiliar sound carried weight. Every pause between noises felt deliberate. My wife began checking locks compulsively. Doors, windows, even closets. She slept lightly, waking at the smallest movement. I pretended I was fine. I wasn't. Because the question wouldn't leave me. Why our door? There were dozens of apartments in that building. Some newer, some older. Some with better locks. Some with worse. Yet it had stopped at ours. Stayed. Listened. A week later, I went back alone. I told myself it was practical. We still had belongings there. Furniture, clothes, papers. I needed to pick them up. The building looked the same. The stairwell smelled the same. The flickering light still buzzed above our door. Nothing felt threatening. That almost made it worse. Inside the apartment, everything was exactly as we'd left it. The bed unmade. The laptop closed. The air stale from days without movement. I packed quickly. Too quickly. I didn't want to stay. As I carried boxes toward the door, something caught my attention. The lower lock, the one we never used. It was scratched. Not deeply. Not obviously. Just faint. Shallow lines around the keyhole. Like something hard and narrow had dragged across the metal repeatedly. I stared at it for a long time. The scratches hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. I left immediately. That night, sleep didn't come. I lay awake on the couch at our friend's place, staring at the ceiling, replaying the camera footage in my mind, the way the thing moved, the way it listened. And then another thought formed. A terrible one. What if it hadn't been checking doors randomly? What if it had been checking for something specific? I went back to the building one last time. This time, I brought the laptop. I told myself I wanted proof, that I needed to understand what had happened, that once I saw it again, I could put it behind me. The camera was still connected, still working, I waited until night. Midnight passed, then 1, then 2. At 2:47 a.m., the feed changed. The stairwell light flickered, and something moved at the edge of the frame. It emerged slowly, as if climbing up from below rather than walking in. The same dark wrappings, the same wrong proportions. But this time, it didn't go door to door. It came straight to ours. It stood there for a long time. Then it did something new. It leaned closer to the door than before. And it spoke. Not words, not sounds. It pressed its face, or whatever was beneath the fabric, against the door and breathed. Slow, deep, patient, as if memorizing the shape of what lived on the other side. Then it raised one hand and traced something on the wood. Slow circles, over and over, like marking a place. I closed the laptop. I didn't watch it leave. We moved shortly after. Different building, different neighborhood, new locks, heavy ones. We lock everything now, every night, every time. My wife still wakes up sometimes, staring at doors, listening. I still check the locks before bed, sometimes twice, sometimes more, because I've learned something. Doors don't keep everything out. Some things don't need to break in. Some things only need to know where you are. And some habits, the quiet ones, the familiar ones, are invitations.